Black Conversations is brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. The opinions expressed within this series are solely of the individuals and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the Castle Milk Stout brand. Please be advised, the following program contains views which may be triggering for sensitive viewers.
Hello, I am an actor, a voiceover artist, 5-time SAFTA-winning actor, and I go by the name of Warren Masamola.
My name is Tutu Busani Dube. I am an author of fictional novels.
My name is Desiree Markroff, and I'm a producer and storyteller.
Hi, I'm Silo Makika. I'm an actor, director, and playwright.
Being Black, it's not just about the skin, first of all. It's about the experiences, the culture, where we come from.
Storytelling for me is about unpacking what it is to be human. It's about finding the common shared experiences that we have as human beings. And I suppose it's really about surfacing those heightened moments of emotion, of drama, of connection. And it's reflecting who we are.
I saw a play for the first time when I was 15 years old in 1975. And it was Gibson Kenter's How Long? And I was fascinated by what I saw on stage and, started even mimicking what I saw on stage.
Being a storyteller for me is everything. For as long as I can remember, I've just been narrating stories. I didn't know that I would end up an actor, but reflecting back from as much as I can remember, as far as I can remember, storytelling is everything for me.
There's a lot of storytellers. I'm just one of them. So I tell the stories as I see them, as honestly as I can, but also I think so. I write books. For me, I write, my stories are as present as possible. They are now. If I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write about now. And for me, that is just me trying to immortalize this time that I'm living in.
Let me just say, for me, what storytelling is the ability to tell any type of story and tell it in a way truthful to the character or the personality of the story that you're telling. What does storytelling mean to you, Brasalo?
Storytelling, for me, it has two things. First, storytelling for me started as me being a vehicle for me to exercise my acting talent. That's what storytelling meant. I mean, for me, it was just all about me expressing myself.
I must say, with me, it's such a privilege and an honor that I do not get regarded as my characters. I don't know if it's because of the vast characters I get to play or that I've played and showcased before. People generally call me by name and surname.
I mean, I will always be Archie, and there's nothing that I can do. I mean, I was just trying the other time to, say, hey, I don't want to be called Archie anymore. Is there anybody who can write a story and then name that character Sil so that people start identifying me in my own name,
Desiree, for as long as I can remember, I've been watching your work on TV before I knew that I would end up an actor, which was Izo. I was in high school and the characters there were in high school. South Africa was going through a different phase then, post-apartheid and stuff like that. What does storytelling mean, or what is it for you? And for you to go as far back as the 90s and the type of stories that you were telling at the time and up to today?
Well, I think it changes all the time, but then I think at its core, it's always about surfacing what makes us human and sharing those things that make us human and finding where they are common and the things that we share in pain or joy. So those, that's the world that I think story constantly seeks out to find those emotions in those spaces. And Yuzu was just such an incredible journey. It was, of course, we were in this exuberant moment post-apartheid. It was the first time that you felt that you could be telling stories that were truthful. And you got to look at the context of the time too. If you look at television before 94, what were the stories that were being told, and specific Black stories that were being told, and who was in control of those stories, and what was the research done, and who was telling those stories? And suddenly there was this liberation to tell stories and to be more truthful, to unpack really what was happening. And in that particular moment, actually our brief was really simple. It was, look at the challenges that is facing education at that moment. And the team, Tebogo Matlatsi and Angus, spent almost 18 months in Tutuzele. There was a big team of people, spent 18 months hanging around at schools, in the toilets, in the canteens, in the playground, listening to what was happening, to surface stories and characters. And, when they came back with all this content, it was just this incredible world that I think none of us really understood what was happening in schools. We were all buoyant about liberation, but actually our kids were really in difficult spaces, and schools were in a shamble at the time. And so telling that story felt like there was no option but to tell the truth of what was happening at schools. And of course that also created a lot of controversy, and many people weren't happy to hear what was going on with kids. But we felt like it was a huge challenge and honor to surfacing those stories and bringing them to life.
Dudu, you gave us so many stories. A whole lot of South Africans didn't know who you were. And we got to know you via the 3 books that you wrote that ended up being turned into a TV show. What does storytelling mean for you?
So obviously I write books. That is my medium. But for me, it's just looking at people and looking at things that are happening around me and just putting them into paper, or just say fictionalizing them, when in fact it's just a reflection of society and how it is. And people can read these books and see themselves and maybe try to understand people around them through these stories that I write, because everybody's there. I mean, your aunt, your criminal cousin, your drunk uncle, everyone is there in the stories that you tell. They are as close to reality as possible.
And was this your first sort of books to be told in a TV form or screenplay?
Yes, it's a series. So it's this really just one family, same people, but with the stories being told in different voices. It's Somo the wife and the 2 after it. It was the first time I'd ever given the license to TV to produce them into a visual production.
Dudu has a hive, like Beyonce has a hive. So that's the Dudu hive.
Black Conversations is brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Black Conversations is brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
I'd like to say something about Izo. I remember, actually, I saw the trailer first. And when I saw the trailer, I remember thinking, oh, now I can grow up. And the reason behind that, the reason for that was that, I think in a way, I had actually held myself hostage. And I held myself hostage in the sense that because I always felt there were certain roles that I still needed to play. And when I saw Papa Action and I saw all these young boys doing I can grow up. That part is taken care of. You know what I mean?
I think we've got a really amazing batch of talent right now, young talent. You've got to also define what young is. To me, young is anybody under 30. Under 40. But there's a lot of, and also new talent doesn't have to be young. New talent can be people entering the industry that didn't feel that they could enter before.
Do we feel that we are telling our stories honestly, and does it take us, particularly Black folks, to tell our stories? I ask this because there seems to be a debate on the streets that Black stories should be told by Black people, because Black people don't ever tell white stories, and white people can tell Black stories from everywhere in the world, including in South Africa. But it seems like we can't tell other people's stories unless somebody tells our stories. What's your take on that?
Do we want to tell white people's stories?
Maybe that's another question that we don't ask.
That's another thing. Well, personally, I don't know. I wouldn't tell a white person's story. I didn't go to school with white people. I didn't, it's a place that I do not know. And I like telling stories about things that I know that I can relate to. But also in terms of the point that we need to tell our own stories ourselves, we need to control the narrative. We need to be the ones to be showing the world who we are and what we are about. And I feel like for the longest time, Africa has been used and it's not people trying to tell our stories. It's people making money out of our stories. It's somebody coming from England to come here, they write about Africa, they write about, the poverty, apartheid, how were we before apartheid, how are we now? Somebody's gonna come and write about load shedding, and all of that. So I've always felt like it's something that is about business more than anything. I do feel that when we tell our own stories, it doesn't come from a place of benefiting, of making money. It's just coming from a place of just showing the world who we are in a deeper and in a more positive way, and in a way that you are going to be happy about, whether they are going to accept that or not. But the world has always been interested in South Africa and in Black people as a whole.
It's been proven that it doesn't take only Black people to tell Black stories, whether willingly or not. It's been evident for the past 5 decades, and it continues to happen.
Something interesting happened when I was I did my master's in screenwriting when I was in the UK. And one thing that happened was, and I was always fighting, with this whole thing of other people telling our stories and all that, and it was after that we had a module where one had to write a spec script on an ongoing series. And what I chose to write my spec script on was 6 Feet Under. And what was interesting was the reaction of my lecturer to the episode that I had written. And she said, I'm presenting these characters as one-dimensional characters. I said, exactly, that is what white people do, when they tell our stories. And I said to her, for instance, they don't even speak the language of the people that they are writing about. And I know a little bit of English. And throughout my life, all the movies and whatever that I've seen, I actually know the white world more than they know the black world, because I understand it also from the little bit of English that I know. And my cue, there are also aspects of English that will also go, of the language, that will go just a little above my head. So what more when I can even speak the language and it can go over my head? What about them when they don't even know the language and understand the nuances in language of these people that they're writing about? And that's why they end up basically even themselves bringing, one-dimensional characters.
I think that's completely true. And from my response, thinking about that, and I think about it a lot all the time as we engage in every project that we've done, Yuzu is an example, is it's a lot about collaboration. You have to work. I mean, our medium is a medium of collaboration.
It is.
So it is about intent, it's about collaboration, it's about, if you don't know something, you have to find out about it. And I think I used to feel very complicated about this as a white creator. Mostly I create content for Black audiences. And I've often asked myself the question, you know, is it okay for me to be creating this show? And what am I contributing to the discussion around something? And I think the answer for me has always been, it's how you intend to go into the project, how you collaborate, how you listen, how you let things surface from people whose stories you are trying to surface in a way.
Black Conversations is brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Black Conversations is brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
I was contacted once by an young American guy who called me on a Sunday night saying he was in South Africa and he wanted to do a documentary on music and the role of music in the struggle. And this was before 94, this was in, I think it was 92 or 91 that he called me. And I was so surprised that this American was making this call anyway. I met with him and he said he had grown up in America watching TV and he was really interested in South Africa, and he saw behind all the politicians and all the news clips, he would always see people singing. And he felt like there needed to be a story told about this. And I had been very sort of disparaging, well, you know, what is a white American Jewish filmmaker? How they, you know, and that film turned out to be an unbelievably beautiful project. It's called Amandla, A Revolution in Four-Part Harmony. It's won double Sundance Awards. And, you know, and I look at it now and I think, thank goodness this little American boy put his foot out there, because all that was recorded, all those incredible interviews, those beautiful interviews with Hugh Masekela, all of that music was packaged in a way that, you know, the whole world could celebrate it. So I think sometimes the other eye can see beauty and interest in spaces that one takes for granted yourself. Absolutely. But it depends on your intent as you go into that space.
Yeah, I think the great thing about that project that you're also talking about is that this person took their time to humanize, to put faces into this music that he's talking about, and they came here and they asked, and they researched, and they found out, and they didn't just go and I mean just do just above level work of thinking whatever they hear.
No, it took 10 years
get from whoever they were asking. And I think what Selo said earlier, I just wanted to add to that, which is something that sometimes we laugh about it in the book space, where there's always Thembi. It's always Thembi. That name Thembi is the name that always goes into a book, and it's a domestic worker. There's always Thembi, the domestic worker. You know, in books that I can just say aren't Black. So the only Black person that you'll see there mentioned somewhere here, maybe five times, is, Thembi, the white keeper. And it's very, I don't know if I can say it's offensive. The fact that even the name is not creative. It's always Thembi and Sipho, the gardener guy. And even with the names, man, you just want, I mean, do you not know any other Black names? I mean, are these the designated Black names that you're going to use? And what does Thembi, the domestic worker, mean in this story? Is it trying to reflect South Africa as it is, that there's always going to be in any household or in any white household, there's always going to be a domestic worker, and her name is going to be Thembi, and she's going to be Black, and she's going to behave the same way as the Thembi in the other book or the Thembi in the other story. And I mean, it's I think the small things that I don't think maybe the writer sees as a problem, but as someone who consumes that story, and as someone who is maybe a Thembi, whose mother is a Thembi or whose aunt is a Thembi, it's something that that just sits with you? You see something wrong with it?
I think that we compromise on time and research. I think that we're in an industry that's a very quick turnaround. And I think that there's a lack of respect for how long it takes to write and create good story.
You know, I mean, as you're telling the story about this American guy, you know, I mean, the plays of the 80s, Sophia Town, Woza Albert, Ballpie, and all many South African plays that basically managed to go abroad, you know, and in all those plays, there were protest plays, you know, and Nandi Nyembe was in Sophia Town, and I think they'd gone to Chicago or something, you know. And basically, I think this white American has been watching a lot of South African works, you know, that basically came to Chicago or whatever in the States. And he goes to Tim, he said, please tell me, how do you people enjoy sex? You know.
Oh my goodness.
And Nandi was like, no, like any other person, you know. And,
What
you
a
know,
question.
Exactly. So Nandi says, but why are you asking me this question? And this guy says, you know, I just thought maybe you guys, you know, for instance, when you're making love and you orgasm, you know, you just shout,
Beautiful, positive, isn't it?
you know, because that's what he's always been consuming. And then he started bringing, you know, building images of the people who were telling a story. But that now also goes into it, because now our stories now in the 70s, in the 80s and whatever, most of them were political. You know what I mean? And now we kind of like made a jump and said, let's tell social stories. And now when we tell social stories, now it's all about crime, about this, you know, Jigecho and it's witchcraft. You know what I mean? And we don't bring that delicate side, that complex side of the human condition. And it has to do with people who basically, you know, want to venture into that story.
But I think if you talk about violence on television, and I think we should look at ourselves and say, what stories are we telling and why do we keep going there? It's also looking at the landscape of television throughout the world. Actually, if you look at how much you consume American television, just in general, switch TV on, and how much of it actually rides on violence. And maybe, and so then you've got to look at what does that say to your own context when you start to tell stories in South Africa. And you and I were talking earlier about this to say, you know, recently I had felt you switch TV on and you see so much violence. And it works when it is, you know, for example, in your book, you understand that these are characters in the taxi industry.
The world,
you know what's happening, you know, it takes you 2 minutes to research, but it doesn't necessarily translate anywhere else. I don't see anybody else in any street pulling out guns and shooting each other. So I do think that we have to also push back as storytellers to this sort of perpetual notion that violence sells. Because there is an idea, violence and sex sells. And so as content creators on television platforms, you're constantly pushed into that space. And you've got to be able to push back and say, well, love also sells. And family dramas also sell. The Americans are brilliant at telling family dramas where there's no antagonist. And yet we feel compelled always in our writing to have a strong antagonist that we've got to overpower.
I heard through the grapevine that Brazil has never gotten royalties. How true is this?
It is true.
People are not sitting at home saying, well, we want to watch witchcraft on TV. We want to watch violence on TV. People don't know what they want to watch on TV. They do not know.
I mean, I went to drama school with 20 in Atlas, and the only people that are working in the industry, it'd be TV, film, in front of the camera or behind the camera as crew. It's just the 3 of us out of 20. So I can't imagine the amount of people that graduate and don't get employed. And that is the sad reality.
It's not an easy space industry. It's not one that pays very well. And I think it's the one where we work the most. You don't have working hours. there's a lot of things that are not regulated in terms of that we're not protected.
Black Conversations is brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.